So for the last about 4 to 5 years, especially when Formula E Gen 2 was happening, when Formula One was deciding on its future, and now with IMSA and WEG going a certain way, there has been a lot of talk about what technologies these motorsport series, racing series should embrace, and how they want to align themselves with automotive manufacturers and have more teams on the grid, and so on and so forth. And not all the series are out of the woods yet. Let's say it that way. Most recently we saw IndyCar struggling. They were trying to introduce the hybrid powertrain, the hybrid engine, but they failed to do so. They failed to introduce a new engine at least. They're still looking to add the hybrid components onto the existing engine over the next couple of years, but they are not the only ones who are looking for a solution, and looking for a solution that attracts more manufacturers, because one of IndyCar's struggles right now, as we have covered in the past, is the fact that they only have two and only two manufacturers on the grid.
Yeah.
Along with IndyCar, we also have WRC. Now, Race Car Engineering did a phenomenal article on the struggles of WRC, trying to decide on a future formula for the power unit so that it attracts a lot of manufacturers. Now, the article outlined how the current hybrid system has produced the most exhilarating cars, but the costs are through the roof. And also, how there are manufacturers currently who are willing to join the grid if WRC were to go all electric. Now, in this debate regarding technology and what technology should these manufacturers, should these racing series pursue for their future, there are two aspects of it. One is what technology will best align with the most number of manufacturers that they're able to attract. And the second is the cost aspect of it. Because the technology can align, but if the cost does not align with what the manufacturers can spend, you will not be able to attract manufacturers into your racing series. That is something that Formula E has done really, really well. So I pose a question that why is there a need for one solution, one technological powertrain solution, when we can have multiple solutions in the world of equivalence of technology? So the question today that we're trying to answer is equivalence of technology, EOT, the future of top level motorsport?
Yep.
And the reason, obviously, I've outlined why I'm asking this question, and here is why I believe that EOT could be the future of top level motorsport. Now, we see EOT in the hypercar class right now in WEC, with the Glickenhaus being the only ICE engine powertrain currently, I believe. All other powertrains on the grid right now are hybrid. We see EOT in W2RC, so that is the World Rally Raid Championship, where Audi is the only electric powertrain or hybrid powertrain, to say so, however you want to put it. So it is not that it cannot work. Now, let's turn back the wheels a little bit and talk about what EOT is for people who don't know what EOT is. So most people who have been around the world of motorsport know about balance of performance, BOP, balance of performance. So BOP basically tries to converge the performance of all the cars in the same class with the same power unit type. So if the cars in a class have the same power unit, so an ICE engine or whatever, their performance will be converged using balance of performance. Balance of performance uses power and weight to converge the performance of all the cars in a certain class that are using the same powertrain. EOT on the other hand uses fuel efficiency of these powertrains and the power of the powertrains to converge the performance of the cars in a class that might use different powertrains. So instead of power and weight as in BOP, you're looking at power and fuel efficiency or stint length and that sort of stuff. So like how much energy can a particular car use in a particular stint length. Now, the success of EOT in, let's say, W2RC has been great in my opinion. It's generated a lot of, great press, a lot of noise, a lot of hype around Audi joining that class, and them making the rules such that Audi is able to join. And the rules are pretty loose, and other manufacturers should be able to follow suit if they choose to do so. Similarly, in WEC, they have, even moving forward, they'll be able to accommodate a lot of other manufacturers, especially like, let's say, privateer teams who are selling some road cars. They aren't like a global automotive manufacturer, but they're selling some cars like Glickenhaus to reduce their costs and still allow them to be able to compete with the big names such as Ferrari, such as Peugeot, such as Toyota, and so on and so forth. So, what is stopping these other series like WRC and IndyCar from, you know, basically undertaking such a formula and expanding the series to manufacturers who want to bring in, let's say, not too diverse of technologies, but technologies that the series, the promoters can work with, that the organizers can work with.
Yeah, that's that's a very important. I mean, that's a very interesting. Sorry, question as we discussed. I mean, as we talked earlier off the show, but yeah, I mean, see the things that VEC have done with the hyperclass and the and this thing, right? They have created we and I remember it happened with even when Rebellion were racing, when Toyota were the only hypercar, yeah, only hybrid,
Only
only
hybrid,
the
yeah.
last LMP one basically, and it was all, and
Yeah.
the LMP, the better LMP twos were converted into LMP ones, and it was LMP one hybrid or LMP one, and Rebellion was in LMP one. So we use this. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the name now. But this formula to EOT, yeah, sorry, EOT,
EUT.
to make that competitive. And Rebellion were competitive. Obviously, Toyota were winning races, but Rebellion was still competitive. And again, in Dakar, as you said, Audi have been able to win stages and compete in the overall classification as well, apart from their failures and the mechanical failures and crashes and like that. So it has been successful. I guess why other championships are not using it is it may have to do with the looks of it, because I mean, I don't know, but when you open a championship up a bit, I guess you don't want your championship to be too open, like too loose, too unrestricted in a way, I guess. So that's why they have been playing it safer. But with IndyCar right now, this is something that they can adapt to open it up a bit and attract new manufacturers. As of right, like till now, keeping it closed has not worked for them, right? So moving forward, this can be something that they can adopt.
So it's not just about IndyCar. I think
Yep.
WRC is at a more interesting point with their future too, right? So currently, if you see at the WRC grid, I think it has shrunk a little bit. There's only three manufacturers. I think
Yep.
4 or 5 was the sweet spot that most people talk about. So there's only three manufacturers right now, and there are more people and more manufacturers in WR2C.
Yeah, WRC2 and
I
WRC3
think,
as
or
well.
WRC2, sorry. The- yeah, so there's a lot more manufacturers there, and they're using just the ICE formula that they have used in the past. And a lot of WRC, let's say one folks, are stepping back to WRC2 this year, and the organizers are debating whether WRC2 is becoming, the primary
Yep.
or the most marketable series for the championship, and so on and so forth. So I think one issue with WRC that I can see is not all technologies will be available everywhere. So you might. So I think Hyundai maybe tested or Toyota tested a hydrogen car at the Belgium rally.
Yep.
Somewhere, I think last year, that race car engineering talks about, and they had to take the car back to Brussels to get it, refueled, because there was only one singular hydrogen power station in Brussels, Belgium. So that is one aspect of it, is like, how can you carry this
Yeah,
infrastructure of refueling along with you, which is why our series like that to remote places across the world, So which is why WRC might not want to adopt an EOT sort of formula, because even though it might open up the series a little bit, might attract
The
more
infrastructure
manufacturers,
would be the biggest issue. Yeah.
it the infrastructure required for it would increase costs, let's say, especially if the manufacturers are asked to supply their own energy infrastructure, let's say, right? But that is not to say that it's not possible. Maybe you don't open it up in such a way that multiple, more than 4, 5
Yep.
technologies are can be in the same
Two
series,
alternatives, yeah.
but you could probably open up to, let's say, two different technologies. You could open up to, let's say, electric and hybrid, or electric and ICE, or electric, ICE and hybrid. Let's say up to three different technologies, right? And I think you could find the sweet spot there. And if you're doing that, you only need to create infrastructure for, let's say, two different types of powertrains,
Fuel.
because two of them are still using
Yeah.
fuel, whatever, gasoline or sustainable fuels or whatever, and the other one's using electricity, which you can technically, yes, it might not create the best PR for the championship, but you could technically
Yeah,
produce
yeah,
that
yeah.
with diesel
Yeah.
generators on site. I'm just saying, until you figure it out, it buys you some time to create those infrastructures in those places, right? Um, so I really think EOT has something to offer to both IndyCar, WRC, and other top level motorsport series. And I think in the past we have also tackled the issue of why electric racing isn't more mainstream, or how it could go more mainstream by participating in these different series. And I think this EOT formula will allow promoters or championship owners to tackle
Yeah, that's
both
true.
of those
That's true.
questions in the same go. They will most likely, I'm imagining, get more manufacturers and be able to go electric, and showcase the electric racing alongside other forms of powertrains, ICE or hybrid or whatever. The only issue there, I feel, is the competitors might be upset depending on how the grid is changing and how the energy, or like the EOT, is allocated and calculated, because we have often seen in WEC and other classes which use this sort of calculations, even in BOP, that manufacturers and
Yeah.
teams often get upset if it's not converging well. If a team, but the counterpoint to that is, that is something that is evaluated continuously, race per race, and has worked well enough for WEC. And if you look at WEC's success, and IMSA success, let's say, not IMSA so much, but let's say WEC's success, it has been pretty well. And similarly for W2RC over the last couple of years. So the little amount of data that we have shows that it can work. Will it require a little bit of people management more than usual? Absolutely. Will it require a little bit of angry
Yeah,
face?
absolutely.
Will it produce a few more angry faces than usual? Yes, absolutely. Will it make the sport more sustainable? I think so, especially in the medium term. Maybe not in the long term. Maybe 10 years down the line, you need to choose a technology that works for more manufacturers than all manufacturers, and to keep your sport sustainable. But I think it does secure the
Yeah,
future of the
absolutely.
sport in the medium term.
And I mean, the way VEC went about it was they opened it a bit and they allowed the manufacturers to innovate themselves and bring the product to the organizers, and then the organizers evaluated it and created the BOP and the EOT, both the things. So I mean, forcing it upon the teams or the manufacturers would be very tricky. But if you open the regulations up a bit, and you allow someone to innovate on it, and they come in, they create something like Audi did in Dakar, and like Glickenhaus is doing in VEC. So when you do that, if even if there is the engine and privateer side like in IndyCar, it creates that innovation and it gives the opportunity for a better sort of integration than just forcing it on existing teams and manufacturers.
Yeah, I think there's two more aspects to going racing, especially with the current automotive market, right? A majority of the current automotive market has, except for, let's say, Toyota,
Yep.
has committed to an all-electric future. Now, I don't upset electric car fans out there, but I don't believe electric is the future, is the only future for mobility, right? I think it's a multi-solution future for mobility. I don't think electric is the only future. So I think the automotive landscape is going to change over the next, let's say, 10 to 15 years. It's going to be a lot of research and investment in alternate technologies, and it's going to be a lot of changing policies, let's say, and changing targets, because people are going to realize, for various reasons that I'm not going to get into, that electric is not the future, of mobility in everyone's opinion. And I am 100% sure that's going to happen. There might still be companies who commit to an all electric future, and their policy and their corporate goals might be different, which might allow them to pursue that continuously and in the future. But that will not be the case for a majority of the
Yep.
automotive manufacturers having like an all electric future. So I think it is a dynamic landscape in the automotive industry right now, and it's going to change, and it's going to take 10-15 years for it to settle until we have made enough strides in multiple mobility technologies across the board. Secondly, the crux of going racing for a lot of automotive manufacturers is to
Yep.
have a testing ground for future technologies. Let's not forget that. That
Yes.
was the biggest draw for Formula E. Mercedes came and left in 2 years because they conquered, and they were like, all right, we have reached our goals, we're leaving. But the companies that haven't reached their goals, let's say, are still there. They're still innovating and trying to develop within the framework of these racing series. So clearly, there is interest to use racing as a testing ground, to use motorsport as a testing ground for future mobility technologies. So I think EOT also tackles that by getting that little bit of leeway to other teams that might be coming in. We've seen EOT sort of implemented, or just allowing other manufacturers to come in and, let's say, experiment with something new in different ways and forms, right? Toyota has tested theirs in WRC as a one-off. I think they also did a test, maybe it was Toyota or maybe Honda, somewhere in like a 24-hour series
Yeah.
in Japan. We know about the Garage 56 entry in Le Mans. So there are other aspects, other avenues to test new technologies, but to really integrate it into the series could be absolutely era defining for that series if done properly, in my opinion. And I think WRC, given the infrastructural challenges, might not be the
Yep.
best place to do so, but they could open up our rules a little bit, like we talked about, or they could, or IndyCar, let's say, which
Yeah. Purpose
actually
built
races
places.
in
Yeah. Yeah.
civilized places, and in the middle of in the middle of civilization, they could afford more of that. So yeah, I really think EOT has a place in the racing industry, and given, especially in the
Yep.
case of
Exactly.
IndyCar, that most
Exactly.
teams are customer teams. Clearly, they're not. None of the teams are factory teams. They could pair up with different we could see a lot of privateer teams pair up with different manufacturers to help them go racing in a way, while the manufacturers
Yeah.
concentrate on the
Absolutely. I
technology,
mean,
on just
at the
developing
moment,
the
the
technology
issue
itself.
with Honda and Chevy are the cost for them. It is too high, right? Yeah, and the capacity as well. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Not
So
just
I
the
mean,
cost,
it
just the
it does open
capacity
up
that
open
they,
the entire space very much, and it again, I mean, it allows what we have talked about in the past. It allows innovation because only the OEMs will innovate, and only they will drive the market forward, right? So the motorsport industry needs them, and that's the best way to go.
yeah, like what if let's say, just for example, you say,
Yep.
okay, so Toyota, let's say, wants to join IndyCar, but they don't want to have an ICE engine that uses whatever other sustainable fuel or gasoline or whatever that the other teams are using. They want to use hydrogen. Well, they could still have a
Yep,
hybrid
exactly.
engine, a hybrid powertrain with a hydrogen powered ICE engine. Why not, right? So I think there is room. I think people need to be a little bit less rigid, and I think a few folks
Yep.
need to take a little bit more risks than otherwise, because if the series is not growing,
Yeah,
you're just
exactly.
looking
Yeah.
at a slow death instead of a quick death if you took a risk, if you took the so I'm not saying be reckless, but I think there is room for more risks than people have been taking over the last couple of years with
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
way they
Yeah.
have approached
Absolutely.
organizing and updating their technical rules and regulations.
No,
But yeah, that's all
nothing,
from my
nothing
side.
to
Anything
add
else that you want to
because
add to this
it's. I
conversation,
mean,
Vedant, before we wrap
it
this
was
up?
your topic. You brought up a very interesting topic, and I'm just surprised that no other no other championship has even talked about it, let alone implemented, even talked about it. Dakar and WEC have implemented it because there was room, like they wanted to attract more manufacturers, and they wanted to, and they were successful in it. But yeah, it's just surprising that it's not spread out more. Yeah,
Yeah, like you said, even I'm surprised it's not talked about as much in the mainstream media as we might expect it to be when you really dive into the topic and what it could do for different sports. But again, I would like to know
yeah,
why
exactly.
that is the
Yeah.
case. If this is the case, there might be a reason behind it as to why different series don't want to go down this route. So yeah, if anyone listening to this by chance knows why, please let us know, reach out to us and enlighten us. But once again, thank you Vedant for joining me, and as always, we'll catch you on the next one.